I'm laying out, because what had happened in the, there was a GOP runoff for the governorship. And he was running against a guy named Casey Cagle, who was the lieutenant governor. And they were trying to outdo each other in terms of how much they hated immigrants and how much they loved guns. And Cagle was running as the Trump conservative. Donald Trump came out and endorsed Brian Kemp. And I went, "Arr?" And I said, that doesn't, because Trump's not backing anybody because Kemp didn't endorse Trump in 2016. I said, this doesn't make any sense. Right, this doesn't make any sense. And then I went, oh, Kemp brings voter suppression to the table in a way that Casey Cagle does not. Kemp has been doing this for a long time. He's been Secretary of State since 2010. Under Kemp, there have been massive voter roll purges, where the majority of people being purged are people of color. What the law says is that you cannot purge people simply because they do not vote. You purge people if they've moved out of the voting jurisdiction. You purge people if they're dead. Okay. If they've changed their name and so stuff isn't matching up. Those sorts of things, but simply because they do not vote. So what Kemp's office says is that we don't purge people. We don't even like that word purge. We maintain our voter rolls by people who have not had regular contact with election officials. Now, if you haven't changed your name, you're not contacting election officials. If you haven't moved out of the district, you're not contacting election officials. The only way you're not having contact with election officials is if you haven't voted regularly. Minorities and young people and poor people do not vote regularly. They vote sporadically. Democrat, and they usually vote Democratic, and Democratic folks vote sporadically. So it is a way to wipe them off of the rolls. He has been doing this well before Stacey Abrams. He had been doing this where he had already knocked over 1 million Georgians off of the rolls. So that although the population of Georgia has gone up, the number of registered voters has gone down. He's been that effective. The other thing that he has done is to intimidate organizations that are registering Asian Americans and African Americans to vote. One of those organizations being the New Georgia Project, which at that time had been headed up by Stacey Abrams. They got a long history. And Stacey's group had registered about 100,000 people, the majority of whom were African American. Kemp got on TV talking about we can't have all this voter fraud. So if you're registering black people, it must be voter fraud. And so he launched a very public investigation of the New Georgia Project and could find no voter fraud. There were no charges, nothing. Just a very public investigation and the kind of hint that something's awry. So if you're looking at what he's saying now about the 53,000, he's like, oh, this is all the New Georgia Project and they were sloppy. You know, they're registering all these African Americans and they're sloppy. He went after a group so badly that had registered, Asian Americans, and so these were folks who had received their American citizenship. When they came out of the building with their American citizenship, then this group said, let's get you registered to vote. And was doing a great job with that. And they happened, and there were like 40,000. They happened to notice that many of these people were not on the voter registration list. So folks knew that they had registered to vote, and so when they went to go vote, their names weren't there. And so they contacted this organization. And Brian Kemp, and so the organization that contacted Kemp's office going, yo, what happened? And they got no response. Well, early voting is going on, and early voting is constricted. You only got a few days to do this. And Brian Kemp's office is not responding. So they did a public thing where they said, hey, we registered all these people to vote. They're newly, minted American citizens, and somehow their names aren't on the rolls. And we've asked Kemp's office, and we've heard nothing. Shortly thereafter, I mean like that, he launched a very public investigation against them. So you see the use of the kind of like criminal justice system as a form of intimidation. That's Brian Kemp. No charges. But that organization went out of business. In a little town in, and I'm sorry, but this is, you got me on, Kemp now. A little town in southern Georgia had never, and the town is like 45% black, had never had an African American on the school board. We're in the 2010s. And after some teachers were fired for budgetary reasons, and black folks were like, the last folk you fire are teachers. There's some other stuff you could have done. And so they started doing a massive voter registration campaign, a get out the vote campaign, and several African Americans were elected to the school board. Kemp came in with the Georgia Highway Patrol, or the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and arrested the members of the school board, as well as the folks who were doing the voter registration. Charged them with over 1,000 counts of charges of violation of voting laws. Ran these folks through the courts. 0 convictions. People lost their jobs. The thing is that Kemp has been able to do this, and I think it's because, in many ways, when you think about it, voting laws and what's happening with the votes and everything is very bureaucratic, and Americans like, boom, we were drawn to like, whoo, look at the fire. And this kind of bureaucratic stuff isn't about the fire, but it is a massive, serious burn. And so he's been able to really operate undercover. But this election is so high profile, and people have a sense that this election is basically do or die for America. We're either going to go forward or we're going to go into the abyss. And so there's a heightened awareness now. And so when he pulled this last stunt, and remember, just before that, one of his allies had been a consultant to several election boards and had recommended, and these were election boards that had either majority black populations in the counties or sizable, like 35, 40%. And he had recommended closing most of the voter polls. So like in Randolph County, that's over 60% black, he recommended closing 7 of the 9. And this is a wonderful story, though, about civic engagement. Because what happened was that election board had posted a notice in the paper. And there was a retired government worker who's reading the paper, the way my daddy used to read the paper, from cover to cover, right? And he starts reading the legal notices. Who reads the legal notices? And he starts reading the legal notices, and he sees it. He's like, I can read legalese. I've been in the government. They're trying to shut this stuff down. And he called the NAACP and the ACLU. And it was like a SWAT team coming in there. And it blew up nationwide. Then Kemp said, oh no, I don't think we ought to close 7 of the 9, no. But he's already closed, after Shelby County v. Holder, he's already closed 214 polling places. Most of them in minority and poor neighborhoods. And so for every 1/10 of a mile that a polling place is moved from the black neighborhood, black voter turnout goes down 0.5%. So you can see what the closing of these polls, this is why those other counties were targeted, because he and Stacy are running neck and neck. And so if he can depress the black voter turnout, he's got a chance. That's the only way he's going to win. And that's what he's trying to do. And so it's not over. We don't know what other nefarious stuff he's got going on. Folks are aware, they're heightened, they're looking, but he has been operating for so long in this way. Yeah.
We've got a question in a second.